Low back pain, or pain in the arse. When you get low back pain, the first thing you want to do is figure out what's causing the pain. In almost every case, there's always a neurologic or nerve component, whether the nerve's being trapped or pinched, and we want to figure this out. There's a couple of scenarios here, and we're going to break it down for you. Hey, before I continue, make sure you like and subscribe. Hey, and also don't forget to check our website out because we have the best pillow in the world, bar none. Also, great deals on mattresses this week. And so, on with the video. When you have sciatica, it typically almost always radiates down one side, one leg or the other. If it radiates down both legs, it's probably not sciatica and something else, and something that we're not going to get into this video. We're going to talk about that later. But usually sciatica is down one leg. Sometimes it's coupled with pain in the back as well. Okay, so let's break it down for you. The most common reason for sciatica is a thing called a herniated disc or prolapsed disc or disc protrusion. And we'll break this down for you. If you look at a typical spine, there's 24 movable bones and they're all stacked up on top of each other. And between the bones are these rubbery things called discs. And what happens is most of you people out there are sitting way too much. And when you sit, you lose the normal curves of the spine. You should have a neck curve, mid-back curve, low back curve, and pelvic curve when you're standing, and your ears should line up over your shoulders, your hips, your knees, your ankles, and your spine should act like a coil or spring. But when you're sitting, what happens is you lose the low back curve. This in the y-axis goes like a pogo stick, and the head translates forward. And so instead of the weight being on your muscles and your joints and your discs, it's almost all on your disc, and it's pressing down all day long. And so if you want to take a closer look at this on this model, we have a model here, and you can actually see what happens here. So this creates tears in the outer fibrous rings of the disc, which allows the soft center to bulge out beyond the outer rings, like this. Which hits a nerve and goes down the leg. So to give you an example of what causes a herniated disc, when you're lying down flat on your back, it's about 25 kilos of pressure. When you're lying on your side, it's about 75 kilos of pressure on the spinal discs. When you're sitting, like most of you, it's 150 pounds of pressure on the discs. When you're sitting and you're leaning forward, like most of you do on your keyboard, it goes up to 275 kilos of pressure on those discs. So if you think you have a herniated disc, one of the best ways to tell is generally worse when you're seated or if you're doing flexion exercises. In other words, if you're a herniated disc would look something like this model here, where if you think of the disc like a jelly donut, it's kind of squishing out. And so anything that you're causing that pressure straight down again on the y-axis to push down on that, prolonged seated incorrectly, or if you're being told to do any what they call flexion exercise, touching your toes, for example, anything that going forward here like that, create more pressure there, those things would tend to exacerbate it or make it worse. And that's a really good way to figure out if you have a herniated disc or not. Another reason for sciatica would be a thing called DJD, and that's technically, if we're going to, the shop talk for that is degenerative joint disease. Some older textbooks called arthritis, which is kind of a misnomer because arthro means joint, itis means inflammation. There's over 100 types of arthritises, and basically it's just wear and tear. It's uneven wear and tear. For example, if you're sitting for prolonged periods of time, let's say you're sitting at a desk and you're reaching for your mouse, eventually your body's going to complacently break down into that pattern. If you're not getting up every 10 or 15 minutes, you're going to break down. And so if you can imagine, if I put my arm in a plaster cast and left it there for 6 months or a year, eventually it's going to degrade or break down. It's going to, because if you're not using it, they fuse up. And so if we take a normal bone, a normal healthy disc like that, within a short period of time, about a year or two, it breaks down like this. And what happens is it starts calcifying and breaking down, and the technical term is, you might have, if you've had an MRI, they would say stenosis or canal stenosis. Stenosis means hardening, and basically it's calcifying. And stenosing means it's closing in on the nerves or the spinal cord in and around the spine. The thing about arthritis or spinal stenosis is a good way to tell if you have this or not is if you're standing for prolonged periods of time, it starts hurting. Or if you're doing activities like walking, it really gets worse. And then if you were to take a break or sit down, it actually gets better. And so it generally happens with people in the later years, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, it starts coming on. Although we are starting to see some of this with children now, unfortunately. Another big cause for sciatica is a thing called the piriformis syndrome. And I hate using these words like syndrome because everything's a syndrome now. But piriformis, let's break this down real simple. Piriformis is a muscle, and it's a little muscle, but my God, this muscle can be a real pain in the arse if you get it. It basically comes off this triangular bone here called the sacrum down here in the pelvis, and it goes to the leg bone or femur. And it's a little bone in this area here. And what happens is the nerves go either underneath it, or even worse, for some of you, the nerve actually goes through the muscle. It actually pierces. And if that muscle irritates or contracts, it's actually scissoring down on that sciatic nerve. And it's awful if you get this. Now, the thing about this is sometimes you could think you have a herniated disc when you have piriformis syndrome pain. And they're very, very similar. But the thing that separates the two of them is generally with a herniated disc, you have low back pain as well. And so if you're just getting pain in the ass and going down the leg, pain and numbness or tingling down the leg, it could be the piriformis. So those are the 3 ways you can find out if the sciatic nerve is being pinched or trapped. And remember, it could be a combination of 2 or 3 of those at the same time. And also, before I forget, the thing I recommend to all my patients who have sciatica is our foundation. And I hate sitting without it. But the foundation is really cool. It's designed to take the pressure off the piriformis muscle. It's designed to create that lumbar curve, so it takes the pressure off the herniated disc, and people who have arthritis cannot leave with home. This is an absolute blessing for them. So thank you, like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you tomorrow with the answers.